If you've ever watched a professional drywall finisher, you've probably thought, there's no way I can do that. Honestly, me too. I'm definitely not a professional drywaller, but over the years, I've remodeled rooms, built closets, repaired ceilings, and made just about every drywall mistake you can make. Along the way, I picked up a handful of tips that finally started giving me results I was actually proud of. So if you're a homeowner tackling drywall yourself, these are the tips I wish someone had told me before I started. Tip number 1. Great drywall starts before the mud. One thing I learned pretty quickly is that good drywall finishing starts long before you ever open up a bucket of mud.
Okay, here's what I had to do. I had to move this one over. So right now I'm inside the closet. When you stack two of these like this, it's not exactly the width of this right here. So I had to move this one over just a little bit so that it would line up with this one right here for drywall. So I forgot to do that. And I did have to put one right here just for drywall to go up there and then go around there and then have something to secure onto.
Take your time hanging the sheets. Make sure they fit well and land the joints over framing whenever possible. Also think ahead about your seams. Use the biggest sheets you can safely handle.
Lift it up off the floor. You can put one of these crowbars and step on it, and now we have it lifted up all the way as far as it'll go. Okay, so when you put the screw in, you want to go deep enough where it's recessed, but you don't want to go too deep where it breaks through the paper, because then it won't actually hold. You kind of want to make the screws off to the side because you're going to be taping this edge anyway and covering that screw. Then you also don't want to go too close to the edge because it will break through the edge. So we're just breaking through the paper there. That's actually kind of a little bit too much. All right, so you mark where you want it cut, and then using a straight edge, the side straightener, you just score and cut the layer of paper on the top and set that aside. And then it just snaps. So you push on that cut and then it just snaps. And then you take it up like this and you cut the paper on the other side, and there's a nice clean cut. So you hold a blade like this, okay, and then you hold, let's see, we're at 28 and a half, so you hold your thumb, 28, or your finger, like that, and then you slide your finger across here, and you cut.
The better your drywall goes up, the less work you'll be doing later. Tip number 2. Make your mud work for you. Before you start taping, take care of any large gaps. Instead of trying to fill them with regular joint compound, I like using a setting type compound, often called hot mud. It shrinks less and gives you a much stronger base. Or in this case, filling it with small pieces of drywall that were leftover cuttings. Another thing that helped me was mixing my mud. Straight out of the bucket, it isn't always the easiest to work with. But adding just a little water and mixing it thoroughly makes it spread much smoother. Think creamy peanut butter, not mashed potatoes. Tip number 3. Your knife does most of the work. This is probably the lesson that has saved me the most time. When I first started drywalling, I thought more mud meant fewer imperfections. Turns out it mostly meant more sanding. Use less mud than you think you need, and try to leave each coat as smooth as possible. When taping, use your knife to squish out the extra mud and then let it dry. Don't try to add a second coat on top just yet. Also try to keep your knife clean. Sounds simple, but one tiny piece of dried mud stuck on your knife can leave a line down the entire seam. I'm constantly wiping my knife off. It only takes a second, but it saves a surprising amount of work later.
You want to make sure you're doing a smooth, even coat. I'm doing a 1/8 inch thick coat on both sides of this corner. And it's got to be completely filled all the way down. You don't want any holes in the mud. Okay, now I'm going to take my tape and kind of put a 45 at the corner there. I'm going to put this in here. I'm going to hold it with another trowel.
Now here's one thing I do that some professionals might disagree with. Traditionally, you're supposed to use a wider knife with each coat so you can feather the mud farther and farther out. That's really good advice, but honestly, I usually stick with a smaller knife because I have better control over it. Could I probably finish faster if I mastered the larger knives? Yes, absolutely. But I'd rather put on a few extra coats with a knife I can control than fight with a bigger knife and end up making more work for myself. That's kind of the theme of this whole video. Find what works for you. As a DIYer, you don't have to finish a room in record time. You just have to end up with a wall you're proud of. Tip number 4, build the finish one coat at a time. One mistake I made early on was trying to make every coat look perfect. That's not really the goal. Your first coat isn't supposed to be beautiful, and neither is your second. Each coat is simply making the surface a little flatter than the one before it. And as you build those coats, feather your edges wider than you think you need to. The secret isn't making the joint disappear, it's making the transition disappear. Your eye notices sudden changes much more than gradual ones. Sure, it might take you 5 or 6 coats instead of the 2 or 3 a professional might use, but remember, we're not doing this every day for a living. After drywalling just one area myself, I came away with a whole new respect for professional drywall finishers. Those people make it look easy, but trust me, it's not. If it takes a few extra coats to get the look you're after, that's perfectly okay. Tip number 5, scrape before you sand. Here's one that saves me a ton of time. Before putting on another coat, or before you even think about sanding, take your drywall knife and scrape over the dried mud. You'll knock off those ridges, little boogers, and high spots that inevitably show up as the mud dries. The next coat goes on smoother, and you'll spend way less time sanding afterward. Now, I don't know if every professional does this, but for a DIYer like me, it's become one of those little habits that makes the whole process easier. Tip number 6, sand smarter, not harder. More sanding doesn't automatically mean better drywall. If you're sanding a lot, there's a good chance you simply left too much mud behind on your last coat, or you need to go back with the mud and smooth out some of the bumps or feather out the edges more. The sander should really just be fine-tuning everything. Another reason not to get too aggressive with sanding is because you can actually damage the drywall paper. Once the fuzzy paper starts showing, or worse, you tear through it, you're usually back to applying more mud again. Tip number 7, don't be afraid of a few DIY tricks. This one might make some professional drywall finishers cringe, but if you've got an inside corner that just isn't perfectly straight, or you have some divots you just can't smooth out with the mud, a small bead of paintable caulk can work wonders. Smooth it with a wet finger, let it dry, and paint over it. It hides tiny gaps, softens uneven corners, and gives everything a much cleaner finished look. Be sure to use a caulk that has a good stretch, and it definitely needs to say paintable on the tube. I like to use SureMax from Sherwin-Williams. It has a 35% joint movement capability. This is great because materials shrink and expand a lot due to weather, and you don't want to see any cracks later. If you don't have a Sherwin-Williams near you, look for Class 35 on the back of the tube. The higher the number, the more stretch. So is caulking the corners the professional way? Probably not, but this isn't a video about becoming a professional drywaller. It's about helping regular homeowners get results they're proud of. And for someone like me whose drywall skills definitely aren't perfect, this trick has made a big difference. Just look at the results of this corner after painting. I think it came out pretty good. Tip number 8, primer tells the truth. Fresh drywall always looks terrible. It's different colors and textures, so don't panic. Wait until you've rolled on a coat of primer. That's when you'll finally see the little things that need attention. There'll be tiny air bubbles and little pinholes, or a scratch you somehow missed. It's completely normal. Just fill in those spots with a thin coat of mud, give them a light sanding, and you're ready for paint. Tip number 9, embrace the mindset. I'm just gonna say it. Drywalling is not fun. At least not for me. It's messy, it's dusty, and your arms get tired. You think you're done, and then you realize you have 2 more coats to go. There have definitely been times where I've wanted to throw in the towel and wonder why I ever started. But one thing I've learned is to go into a drywall project expecting it to be a marathon, not a sprint. Don't tell yourself, I'll knock this out in an afternoon. Instead, expect that it's going to take time. Expect that you'll have to come back for another coat. Expect that you'll have to sand, probably more than you'd like. When you go in with that mindset, you're much less likely to get frustrated. You'll slow down, take your time, and make better decisions instead of trying to just rush to the finish line. And before you know it, you'll be standing back looking at a finished wall thinking, you know what, that actually turned out pretty good. Tip number 10. Good enough is sometimes perfect. Here's something I've learned after finishing a lot of DIY projects. You might remember every little flaw, or spot the point that isn't perfect, but everyone else will walk into the room and say, wait, you did this yourself? We're usually our own toughest critics. I've also learned that not every area has to be museum quality. Take this closet, for example. The ceiling and some other joints above inside here aren't absolutely perfect, but you have to be inside the closet, turn around, and look up. Plus, stuff is in this closet. Who's ever going to see it? Don't be sloppy about it, but it doesn't need to be perfect. Tape it, mud it, sand it. Then move on to the places people will actually notice. Sometimes good enough really is all you need. Drywall finishing has actually reminded me a lot about our walk with Christ. Every coat builds on the last one. The first coat isn't beautiful, and sometimes neither is the second or the third, or the fifth. But little by little, with patience, things do begin to take shape. Our faith often grows the same way. God doesn't expect us to be finished overnight. He continues shaping us through each season, smoothing out our rough edges, and teaching us through our mistakes, and making us more like Christ every day. It reminds me of Philippians 1:6. And I am certain that God, who began the good work within you, will continue his work until it is finally finished. Progress, not perfection. And I'm thankful God is a lot more patient with me than I am with my drywall. Some of these tips might not be textbook techniques, and a pro might do things differently. But if they save you time, reduce your sanding, or give you the confidence to tackle your own drywall project, then I'd call that a win. If you found one of these tips helpful, hit that like button, subscribe for more Mission DIY projects, and let me know down in the comments. What is one drywall tip you wish someone had told you before your first project? If you're interested in seeing how I framed this closet, or the cool little man cave loft I built, check out the links to the full videos in the description below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on Mission DIY.